and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show. I am your host, Michael Bredthauer, and I am so excited today. I am bringing on a great friend and an awesome guest to talk about something that everybody on this show wants to know more about and how to do, and that's become a virtual real estate investor. And more than that, how to overcome the fears and all the stuff that's behind that. Now, before I get too much into that, I don't want to take away the thunder and cloud from my guest here, Nathan Amaral. Am I saying that Amaral, right?
Amaral.
Amaral. I'm so sorry. He told me right before we got on here, and I butchered it anyways. All right, say that again.
It's all right. It's Amaral, or like the car cleaner, Amaral.
Amaral,
like the car cleaner.
Okay, yeah. Amaral. So Nathan, I apologize, but thanks for coming on today's show, and welcome.
Awesome, bud. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, real quick, for those that don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick background on who you are, what you do?
Sure, man. Yeah. So it's great to be at like this episode being virtual in real estate. And actually 13 years ago, I started out in real estate. I got introduced to it through my ex-fiance's dad. In order to marry his daughter, he forced me to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so I took the book and then, whatever, a week went by and then I'm like, okay, here you go. And then he said, okay, well, what's in chapter 6? Well, guess what? I didn't know what was in chapter 6.
Oh, he quizzed you.
Yeah, he did. And so he's like, if you really, and he got dead serious with me. He's like, if you really want to marry my daughter, go read this book. And I did actually. Right after that, I read the book. And actually it was from that moment on reading that book, I got hooked. And when I got hooked on it, I mean, I was working like 3 jobs. I was a newspaper carrier at 4:00 in the morning. Then I'd go to my TJ Maxx job, retail and all that stuff, in a restaurant at night. And then, so one of the things that really stuck out to me was this whole idea of, making more money. That's all I really cared about, all I really knew. And then he just kind of backed the book up with real estate training. So he took me to a bunch of seminars, seminar after seminar. And it wasn't until I think I was 18, 19 years old where I invested in my first mentorship program, which was way beyond the amount of money that I had, but I borrowed the money to get into one, and I closed my first deal at the age of 20. I don't even know how I closed those deals, honestly, but it happened. And then over the course of time, man, I've gotten involved into apartment investing, single family housing. I've done only a few rehabs. I'm not a big fan of rehabs. Owner financing, lease options, short-term rentals, land, and now currently working on a hotel. And I actually invest in 3 different countries. Talk about this whole virtual real estate. I invest in 3 different countries. I invest in the United States, Portugal, the islands of the Azores off the coast of Portugal, and Uganda, Africa, which is where I am right now.
Wow, that's incredible, man. I mean, that is awesome to hear because, we have some students that are in other countries and, everybody's trying to invest in just the United States. And we have had other guests on the show where they're investing in Canada, but to have somebody who is, investing in multiple countries and all while living in a single spot, that's pretty incredible. And I know that would probably scare the living, bejesus out of most people to even try to dive into that. So what made you jump into that?
Right. Yeah, so actually it started out, I was scared too when I first got introduced to it. It was a buddy of mine who was actually already doing remote real estate. He was doing it virtually and he wouldn't leave his office, but the properties were always like 4 hours away. So I invested in my first property, was an hour and a half away, and I never went to the property. And I was like scared to shit. I was like, but I had felt that feeling before though. I had felt those feelings years ago when I first got started in real estate. And I was like, you know what? I just got to feel the fear and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I did it. And after I did 1, I did 10, I did 40, and I just kept doing it. Even though I was living in the same state, I had never been to, like, for example, Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Right.
Never been to Jacksonville, North Carolina, but I've flipped and invested and hold a bunch of real estate there. So after I got through that, it was when I moved over to Uganda, it was kind of like, this is a no-brainer, It just got easier where I could invest while I was living in Portugal or traveling in Europe or Uganda and investing in the United States. It just became a no-brainer after that.
Wow, that's incredible. How has It's, one of the questions, and I normally ask this at the end is, what's a good book recommendation? But it sounds like the good book recommendation's already been given at the very beginning when your wife's father introduced you into something.
Yeah. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad was probably the launching pad for my investing in real estate. And actually that man, it's actually my ex-fiance's dad. We're no longer,
okay. Ex-fiance.
But yeah. And he actually just introduced me to so much. I'd have to say the best book I've probably ever read, or two, one personal development, one real estate. Real estate is probably going to be Rich Dad Poor Dad, but in regards to personal development, it would probably be The Magic of Thinking Big. That was probably one of my favorite books of all time of personal development, and it kind of just helped me push the envelope of expanding what I can do. Mm-hmm. And of course, I have to say, even beyond just a book, I've actually had mentors in my life who've pushed me to take the words in a page mm-hmm. and pushed it into real application into real life. Wow,
that's cool. So a lot of outside influence definitely helping you out, but now where you are with the virtual real estate, now kind of seeing where you were and where you are right now, and the fears and we'll call them the life experiences that you've probably gone through. What would you turn around and tell yourself, or how would you even guide somebody who's like, man, real estate works, but how do I make it work for me?
Sure. There's so many ways to this thing we call real estate investing. I mean, there's like 300 ways to skin this fish, right? And there's all different types of styles and strategies. I'll tell anybody what my first coach taught me. And he said, stick with one thing until you become successful. And for him, the way he defined my success, and he defined it for me, he said, I don't want you to think about the amount of deals you're going to do with this strategy. I want you to think about a dollar amount. And so I set a very lofty dollar amount. At first, I had closed like a little over $100,000 in sales and in closing deals and wholesaling. And then he asked me that question. He said, stick with something, get focused. Because I started to lose my track. I started to get thinking about all these other kind of strategies after I made some money. Mm-hmm. So I set a goal for $500,000, and when I achieved, and I worked all the way through that, but when I achieved it is when he gave me the permission to go into something else. That's when I was like, okay, I can now venture off. I can now get into apartment investing and so on and so forth. And I expanded my horizon beyond just wholesaling single family houses.
Nice. That makes sense. I know Jason tells the story all the time, and you've been in the shoes as I've been in these shoes, where maybe you haven't been in these shoes. Maybe you were able to skip this step, but a lot of people that get overwhelmed, they have all these educations, all these different strategies in front of them. They're just like, where do I begin? And they might dive into a couple and never really refine it to that extent. So, okay, when picking that first strategy and deciding like, this is what I'm going to get really good at, and doing this from a virtual standpoint, how do you narrow that down?
Well, I'll tell you what, because I was exposed to all these different seminars, all these different strategies and trainers that are out there. Some of these gurus are not even in business anymore. Because when I got started, it was 13 years ago. Heck, we barely had email at that time. We didn't have all these things, text messaging. It was not even there. The way I built my buyers list and the way I distributed my properties was through eFax. That was my go-to source, man.
Wow.
So when I hear about all these technology things today, I'm like, gosh, it's awesome. It's so much better, So for me, one of the things about, just not being distracted was literally I had to have my coach kind of tell me what to do. For me, I think I would have continued to be lost. Okay. I think I would have continued to be lost in this whole idea of I need to know everything about real estate so I don't make a mistake. And what I really discovered working with my coach then was I wasn't afraid of knowledge. I was afraid of what happens when they say yes. That's what I was really afraid of. And he helped me to clear that up. He said, what are you most afraid of? Why aren't you making an offer? I had a buyer's list of I think 70 people. I had my LLC set up. Literally I had business cards, postcards. I had everything but offers, and I had everything but the getting over the fear of getting them to say yes. That was my biggest fear. What happens if they say yes? And so to answer your question, it was his pushing me to discover what it was holding me back. And I think a lot of people lose sight on that part. They think they need all the knowledge, all the ways how to do these contracts and all this stuff and the process. And they forget the most important part, which is the 6 inches between the ears. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I love that. I love that. You're right. Get out of your own way. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. I mean, I think, when you fall, I think fail forward, I mean, there's so many different sayings and quotes.
Absolutely.
And, it sounds cliche, but there are so many because it's true. People are saying it because it's like, well, yeah, I made this mistake so many times and I learned and now I'm doing it, So making offers, man, you're just saying like, listen, you just had to get out there and do it. No, what was the biggest fear then that held you back from that? And then what did you tell yourself to be like, you know what? Just to make those offers.
Let me tell you something. I'll never forget after I made 11 offers, 4 got accepted. I only could take action on 2. And I'll never forget this day. This is what happened. I went to the buyer's, I was assigning a contract. I went to the buyer's location. They dealt in granite countertops. I drove the contract to them and I went there, and I'll never forget this. The wife went into the drawer and pulled out $10,000 in cash. I put those $10,000. I'll never forget it. My hands were shaking. I went to my beat up Toyota Corolla and I stuck the $10,000 under my car, under my seat. And I was so scared. I was like, what happens if I die on the way to the bank? What happens if this or that? I didn't know what to do. But again, I was so excited. I remember sitting in my car, literally gripping the steering wheel because I was so excited that I had never seen $10,000 at that time. I had never held $10,000. I was just like, this is the shit. Like, I want to do this like all the time.
Right.
And so, that's what it was. That moment, it was that defining moment that I'll never forget, because it really just, I saw in that moment that there was someone else that I was bringing value to. And that's when the game changed for me, bud, because all the other times I was just chasing money, thinking, how much can I get for this deal? How much can I get? And I wasn't thinking about my buyers. I wasn't thinking about what value is this bringing to them. And when she was so it wasn't the wife, but the husband, when he was so happy and he was like, thanks. Like, he couldn't really talk to me because he was like cutting granite and he was so excited. He's like, go get the money, go get the money. And I'm like, wow, these people are so excited. That's when I discovered when you build a good buyer's list and you truly provide value, you can get paid whatever you want to build into the deal. You know what I mean?
Man, I love that you say that, because we talk buyer's list all the time. Everybody's, what should I do first? Where do I get started? Find people that want to buy properties. And they're like, how do I pick my target market? Well, ask the people that want to buy properties from you. Where do they want to buy? There's your target market. So I love that you talk that. And then once you phrase it, like you said, like, you're providing a service that they're more than happy. Like, you're going to make them a ton of money.
Right.
So that is incredible, man. And then the fear of success, it's like, that seemed to be the most apprehensive thing you had until it was like, wow, it does happen.
Yeah. When the part where I actually had made money at that moment, I'll never forget. I was actually going to a community college and I went into the computer lab and I still had the money under my seat. Not kidding you. And I went into the computer lab. My friend was sitting there and I sat down and I literally said, I don't need this anymore. That's literally what I said out loud. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm tired of accounting. And of course, I did finish all that, and, but I just felt in my mind, like, if I could do that, I could do that again and again.
Right.
And I think that just that moment of breakthrough, man, I think a lot of people don't forget that. That's what I always tell people these days. Like, when you have your first moment of breakthrough, when you close your first deal, I don't care if you make $1,000 on your first deal, just celebrate that moment, because it's when you celebrate that moment that you'll never forget. Because, it's funny, because after you close like your first deal, you can close a $50,000 deal. We just closed like a $400,000 deal the other day. And it's almost like, okay, yeah, you can brush it off, but if you take it for granted, you'll lose the attitude of gratitude, man. You can't do that.
I love that. I love that. Be grateful for every single deal you close. All right. Well, yeah. Well, fast forward then. I mean, now look where you're at. You've got this virtual real estate business. You're investing in all these countries. How are things now?
It's great, man. Before it was boots on the ground. I used to do a bunch of door knocking. I don't want to take that lightly. That's something I worked really hard at, and I built my business for a long time. And then over the years, I basically took the knowledge I learned and applied it into virtual. I got good at building teams. I got good at not doing everything. I got good at just wanting 2 slices of the pizza. That's what I tell people. I don't want to eat the whole pizza. I get bloated when I eat the whole pizza, right? So I just tell people, I just want my 2 slices. That's it. And then I have partners that do other parts of the business for me. And that's the way I built my business, and I'm able to do that. And I actually like to do that because I get to work on very unique deals. Like right now, I'm working on a hotel deal in Portugal, and also some short-term rentals. That's a very unique deal. I can't outsource that to just anyone. Mm-hmm. So it gives me the time to actually work on those unique creative deals that I enjoy. Nice.
Very cool, man. Yeah, I love that. You've got this, kind of, it's built up the way obviously I love that you say, I did the door knocking, in the very beginning. It wasn't easy. There was definitely a lot of time and effort and work. I hate the picture that some people get like, wholesaling, and wholesaling is probably some of the hardest investing you can do. And so don't go to a seminar and think you're going to walk away with some push easy button, quick get rich. No, you're going to be grinding and grinding and grinding. That's right. But the way you said it, I got good at building teams. That's when you start making serious money with wholesaling. That's when it's like, oh, now it is easy. Yeah. So I love it. Right. Yeah. Get your 2 slices of pizza.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I might take that, but hey, get your 2 slices and that's all you need.
Take it, man. I mean, I think a lot of people miss out on that part. Like they try to do this whole solopreneur and do it all themselves. And I got to know it all. And oh my gosh, looking back, I wish I didn't start that way, but that's all I knew at the time.
Right.
But looking back, I would have made some changes.
So let's ask that question. We're coming up towards the end of the show. Let's just say you could take a step back in time. You got in the DeLorean, you're with Doc Brown, you're back in time, and you're like, hey Nathan, this is future me, future you. Here's some quick tips on how to avoid a lot of this life experiences you don't want to make.
Sure. I think for me personally, the biggest thing I probably would have told myself is stay committed and don't give up. I know I shared a little bit about fear and breaking through and all that, but probably the biggest thing for me was being committed to the process, being committed that I didn't deviate, or I didn't, I knew what I wanted, but then because of the fear, I would drift. Because of the fear, I would procrastinate. Because of fear, I would find something else better to do because I didn't want to operate and I didn't want to do that thing that was scaring me. So I would say being committed is something I wish I could have gone back. I would go back in time and say, hey, be more committed to the process, be more committed to your goals, find out what's holding you back and break through. Wow.
That's power, man. I mean, anybody that's listening right now, that's a huge gem. That's just do Thanks. It and stay committed, man. I love, Absolutely. Right there. Anybody that's listening to this podcast, Nathan just deserves a 5-star review right there for that huge bomb and life experience. Yeah. Where are they all binging up? Well, let's, is there, since you're working all over the country, is there some way people could reach out to you if they want to work with you on deals or potentially send you some leads or anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, once in a while I get some partnerships. I'm pretty well niched in what I do, but if people want to know more about what I do and stuff like that,
get to know more about you. Yeah.
Yeah. Want to know more about me? They can go to fearless-millionaire.com. That's fearless-millionaire.com. And on there, they can get my contact information, see what I'm working on, all that kind of stuff.
Fearless-millionaire.com.
Okay.
Fearless-millionaire.com. Go check that out.